Alright, greetings anyone watching this totally random video. Kind of losing my voice here. I'm not really sure what's going on. I sound like a cucked beta male, like I'm going backwards through puberty or something, but I'm going to do a video anyway. Hopefully I'm not getting sick. But I mean, it's like the middle of June. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so I'm doing this video just to cast a vote. And I got to read off the script here, but because there's no way I can remember all this. I had to write this down. It took me a while to write this down, but anyway, I'm doing this video to cast a vote. It's just one man going on record here to say I'm not okay with what these social engineers are doing. Alright. However, I know if I have a business that depends on me being Googled, I probably need to take this video down. The reason why mgtow videos are being shadow banned, demonetized, and shunned by the mainstream as an ideology of repulsive men who can't get women is that mgtow is a huge threat to the current paradigm. I'm looking at what the social engineers have created and how societies respond overall, not at individuals or anecdotal evidence. I'm aware of women on YouTube whose thoughts overlap significantly with mine, even women as diverse as the dating coach Deanna Lorraine or the political commentator Candace Owens. I recognize that the majority of women do not identify as feminist and are not part of the radical left. However, a socially engineered and mutually beneficial situation between women and government still exists. I believe the social engineers, the rulers of our society, really know what they're doing. A lot of time their goals align, and big government, feminism, the merging of corporation and government for profit, the idea of divide and conquer, etc., work simultaneously against us. To me, women taking men's property and divorces is like people collecting welfare. The government enables that as part of a bigger strategy, knowing people's honor will fall for something free. Almost everything they do is against us. They're pushing everything wrong in school, in the media, with their laws, and turning us against each other racially, men versus women, citizen versus immigrant, any possible way they can. But why? Their end goal is to reduce our population and live like kings and queens with all the best technology and innovation our society produces, while we end up living like slaves, broke, unhappy, and fighting against each other instead of them. They even show us this with their movies and TV shows, if you think about it. I've theorized for years that the social engineers want to completely replace men with government in women's lives. They want women to look to the government for everything: housing, protection, money. They'd even rather get pregnant by the government than men. Women would look down on men as second-class citizens, uneducated, uncultured, worker drone cavemen, entirely superfluous except for paying into the system. It sounds like some kind of horror movie, right? But it seems to me we might be getting closer to that with every year that goes by. One thing that just hit me is Birthel's Law, and how similar women and government are in a way. Birthel's Law reads, "The female, not the male, determines all the conditions of the animal family. Where the female can derive no benefit from association with the male, no such association takes place." So if a girl doesn't text you back, that's the reason why. What just hit me is how every interaction I have with government, I have to pay. Years ago, I began to understand the concept of the private sector teaming up with the force of law to take profit from the people. Private companies teaming up with the courts for profit with diversion programs for youth offenders. Dick Cheney being CEO of Halliburton and vice president of our country at the same time. Doctors and healthcare, government prevents you from buying medicine on the free market. It has to be through their system, and they charge sky-high prices. Or say with car insurance. Government makes insurance mandatory, so insurance companies are virtually guaranteed to get rich. Years ago in California, the Correctional Officers Union sponsored the 3 Strikes Law. Was that to get evil criminals off the street, or to ensure their own job security? Women have teamed up with big government for alimony, child support, and cash and prize divorces. A girl with nothing can marry a rich man and walk away with half his property. She can even do that in succession with multiple men. Women have benefited from, and still do benefit from, affirmative action, equal opportunity programs written into law. The majority of welfare recipients are women, single moms specifically. Women statistically receive less time for the same crime as men. Women benefit in the workplace from laws that encourage employers to fire men based purely on a woman's subjective claim of harassment or inappropriate behavior from men. The entire government education system from kindergarten to college is by women for women outside of the STEM fields. STEM, of course, being an acronym for science, technology, engineering, and math. Teachers are mostly female, and now the majority of college students are too. The expression, boys are treated as defective girls, comes to mind, with boys in grade school being prescribed Adderall at rates far higher than girls. Female teachers teach from a feminine perspective, and a lot of the school environment and curriculum is, at least in my opinion, totally unsuited for boys. They're forced to sit still for hours, discouraged from questioning and using logic except for with math, and they're forced to work in groups as socialist training exercises while learning subjects totally uninteresting to them. School was also filled with pointless busy work and leftist propaganda. When I was in school, I learned virtually nothing of interest to me. I wanted to learn about engines, cars, electricity, etc. How everything in the world worked. I wanted to learn real history, not things like Jews run banks and businesses because they weren't allowed to do anything else. Literally, that gem is thanks to my 8th grade social studies teacher, Mrs. Nichols. As of May 2019, women constitute 57.7% of government employees, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. I was actually surprised by this last statistic because I assumed that since the military is mostly men, the percentage of women overall would be significantly lower. But apparently, they've hired enough women in other positions to more than compensate. Whoa, what's this? Teaming up with government has also transformed having kids from a liability to a safety net for women. In the past, it was the woman who took the bigger risk in choosing a man to have kids with. Now, I don't really think that's the case. I think it is a man who takes the bigger risk since he cannot escape the financial liability. These days, a young woman with no desire to work can survive financially by being a mom. Even without child support from a man, housing subsidies, food subsidies, welfare payments, etc. will still pay her enough to survive, and in some cases they even add up to more than she'd make at a normal job. Given these benefits, is it surprising that women statistically vote more to the left toward big government? Also, women make up the majority of consumers and make the majority of purchasing decisions, not just spend their own money, but also the money of the men they're with. The thing that really got me thinking about all of this was recently standing in line to renew my vehicle registration. The point of license plates is if you hit someone and leave the scene, there's a way to track you and hold you accountable. But instead of selling you non-profit lifetime plates, they make you pay to renew your tags yearly, turning it into yet another source of revenue, which allows them to hire. Why can I not talk? I swear I could read better and speak better, more eloquently, just better overall as like a 10-year-old kid than I can now. What is going on? Anyway, they make you pay to renew your tags yearly, turning it into yet another source of revenue, which allows them to hire more employees and charge even more next year. As I was watching a room full of grown women doing pointless busy work, I couldn't help but think back to being a child doing the same thing in school. I saw them taking my money while contributing nothing of any real value. They're not building or producing anything. Thinking about this government army of women doing pointless busy work at society's expense makes me sick. If they're going to create all these jobs for women, why not at least produce something? And if these women have kids, who's raising them? So they're forcing me to pay all these fees and taxes so these women can sit all day in a huge expensive government building accomplishing nothing while paying other women to raise their kids. It's mind-boggling. I wonder if you cut the size of government in half, get rid of all that waste, then would families really need both parents working? Before feminism, a man could support his wife and kids. After, you need two incomes. With 57.7% female employees currently, is it going to be more in the future? Side note, over 50% of your income goes to property tax, income tax, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, registration, gasoline tax, sales tax, etc., 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 not including inflation. Incredibly, $100 in 1914 is equivalent to $2,511.07 in 2018. Where did that value go? Some of it was transferred to the banking industry as interest on private loans created by fractional reserve lending. But as most of you probably know, the national debt is simply the government spending money that doesn't exist by taking the value out of currency in circulation. So considering the national debt being something like $28 trillion, a lot of the value of our currency was spent by our government. Alright, so I'm done playing around with the totally random camera angles. Shout out to Coach Red Pill for the inspiration. Continuing on with the video though. The thing feminists hate and never acknowledge is a lot of these jobs women have and positions in government they currently hold would not exist without men having created a structure for them to exist within. Women have worked in factories alongside men and helped men build, but for the most part, the structural foundation of society was built by men. Men designed and built the majority of roads, cars, ships, communication networks, planes, computers, electric power stations and power lines, houses, water and sewer systems, almost every single material and technological thing, and of course the political and financial systems. Men's success in the STEM fields is mirrored by about 93% of patents being held by them, and some of the greatest contributors to the modern era like Tesla, Einstein, Edison, Niels Bohr, etc. are household names, at least in households that aren't the product of public schools. The only woman scientist I can think of off the top of my head is Marie Curie, who unfortunately died of complications of radiation poisoning. She still lived to 66 though. That's not bad for back then. Historically, men create the basic foundations of a functional society. They design and build a physical world of that society and defend it with violence if necessary, while women have and raise kids. Once society is stable, then women want the right to vote, but they can't really fight on the battlefield to defend their country. As society continues to evolve beyond producing the necessities of survival, women seek to participate in more aspects of that society, ultimately government, eventually ending up with, through more of that social engineering I love so much, passing laws without even letting us vote on them, more rights and legal protections than men, while of course making government bigger. Personally, I don't believe men are more intelligent than women, or that men's lives have more value because they're statistically more capable of building a society, or that women's lives are more valuable because they can have babies. I believe men and women are different, equally valuable, and complementary to each other. Without each other, our society dies, which is exactly what the rulers are trying to accomplish. Looking at history, it is indisputable that empires fall and that communism does not work. By removing an individual's right to own property, you remove their right to the product of their effort, which removes their incentive to produce anything. Of the 10 planks of Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto, the United States has all but one, the merging of agriculture with the manufacturing industries. I encourage everyone to look up the 10 planks of communism. The United States is currently, and has been for a while, a communist country based on the definitions in Karl Marx's manifesto. A central bank, income taxes, government schools, etc. Those are pillars of communism, not capitalism. I think the rise of mgtow is the future. mgtow, or mgtow, stands for men going their own way. It's men staying true to themselves, doing what they want to do without regard for how society or how women might view it. For example, following a passion that doesn't make money versus working in an industry you hate just to fit into programmed societal expectations and or have status with women. A lot of time, mgtow ends up reducing a man's investment in a system only wanting to take everything he can give and more, while not investing anything back in him. MGTOW reduces his tax contribution, his spending in debt, and makes businesses that survive on the fat of society, like interior design studios with stupidly expensive furniture, restaurants, dance clubs, bars, expensive clothing and jewelry stores, strip clubs, etc., go bankrupt. I would say a significant amount of what men put effort into goes into trying to earn favor with women. Buying a big house, new vehicles, and expensive clothing to impress women all goes away with the MGTOW mindset. As more men figure out that marriage is a legal contract set up for the benefit of women and the state at their expense, they will opt out. I think this will happen simultaneously with more women becoming reliant on government. I find it astounding that $100 in 1914 is worth $2,511 now. How much farther can it go? If you look at Japan, with its super advanced technological society a few years ahead of us, they have what's called herbivore men who are virgins at 30, while women and men both pay for the company of the other gender, not prostitution. I mean, just hanging out. Like people to hang out with, they pay. If you're a guy, it's not even that weird to pay a girl to hang out with you just as friends, okay, in Japan. They work 60-hour weeks to live in tiny apartments the size of my living room and have a beautiful forest littered with human skeletons from suicide. There are signs up telling people if they're considering suicide to not do it, called Suicide Hotline. All right, so like I actually watched a documentary on Japan's suicide forest, and it was really sad and messed up. I just figured I'd mention that in the video. All right. More adult diapers are sold than child diapers. Schools have closed all over the countryside. Do we want to let our society get that bad? Back to what I wrote earlier. The reason why MGTOW videos are being shadow banned, demonetized, and portrayed by the mainstream as an ideology of repulsive men who can't get women is that MGTOW is in an inflation or debt-based consumer economy can collapse businesses, cause bank runs, eventually even collapse the entire government. With insufficient tax revenue, the government would raise the national debt, right, to keep running, only further accelerating the crash. At a certain point, they wouldn't be able to pay their employees, soldiers, police, or anyone. The dollar would be worthless, and people would survive by trade, barter, labor, by producing things of actual value, etc. The way I see it, government would be cut out of the survival economy at that point. Women wouldn't necessarily be, though. They could do all kinds of things like grow food, make clothing, holsters for guns. I don't know why I thought of holsters for guns. Whatever. They just wouldn't have jobs that fit into the government system, like lawyers. Imagine that. No courts, no police, no lawyers. The subculture of preppers is also portrayed negatively in the mainstream for the same reasons. Being independent and able to sustain yourself is a huge threat to the existing system. Obviously, it'd be a very easy process to stop all of this. All they have to do is change a few laws, stop teaching kids the wrong things about men and women, stop trying to position women as competition with men, cut back on the size of government, stop teaching leftist propaganda, cut back on letting in immigrants who vote for the left, etc. Of course, the social engineers know exactly how to do this, but they're playing a tight game. I think they're going to run it right up to the edge of collapse to achieve their goal of thinning the herd. I think that they've overplayed their hand, though. Look at the last election results for proof of that. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a high school dropout who builds things, lives in South Dakota, and drives old diesel pickups.